Hello, Deborah and Nia. This is Ariana. Happy holidays. Just want to say we are so excited for you all to be flying out. We're just a couple of days away here now from your departure, and you should by now kind of have all the information that you need to be successful and have a good trip. You have the binders that we gave to you before everybody left campus. You also have the first aid kit, which is well stocked, and hopefully you've had a chance to maybe kind of like look through that and, kind of see what's in there. And then, you have your Google Drive and you have all sorts of things available to you, phone numbers, all sorts of resources that you can use when you're on the ground. And again, I want you to think so carefully about self-care while you're on the ground, in close proximity with your group. And you're going to feel a lot of pressure over the next couple of weeks here. So take some time to breathe, take time out for yourself, lean on each other, lean on your advisors, and don't be afraid to delegate to your participants so that they really kind of gain ownership over this program. So just wanted to kind of share some sort of, last minute sort of tips around ethical storytelling, making sure that we continue to center a community voice as we engage in some storytelling and as we're making meaning of the experiences that you're about to achieve and accomplish over the next couple of weeks. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then I just want to kind of plant the seed here to talk about post-trip activism and advocacy, and thinking about, what is it that you're going to do when you come back from Cape Town, and some ideas around, how might you share the lessons that you learned with the greater American University campus. And I'll give you some ideas as far as what sort of programs are available to you here within our office, on campus. And this is really going to just be, the start of a greater conversation when you come back. But just wanted to kind of plant that so that it's intentional and that we're not really thinking about post-trip advocacy as an afterthought. But I want you to really be assessing as you move along, meeting people, hearing stories, evaluating community needs as you're actually seeing and living and breathing and experiencing these things. How can you leverage that knowledge to achieve social change and build progress? So that's what we're going to talk about today, and hopefully this should be pretty quick, so let's go ahead and just jump right in. So talking about centering community voice and ethical storytelling, the framework that we'd like to operate in is what we call asset-based community development, or ABCD. This is a model that focuses on strengths, abilities, opportunities, and talents and gifts as the foundation, as all starts from within, from the existing community. So essentially, we're looking at what does this community have to offer, right? We're looking at this from a positive framework in terms of what are the assets that this community has, the resources, the lived knowledge, experience, wisdom that they have that could really continue to help propel them forward. Oftentimes, when we're coming into communities, we often are thinking about everything that's wrong, right? We're thinking about things from a deficit-based sort of focus. And that oftentimes then creates a narrative that really puts the community as being sort of hopeless, right? Or somebody that needs saving. And so we don't want to perpetuate that sort of saviorism framework, that sort of savioristic sort of narrative as well when we're talking about these issues, especially as we go from day-to-day reflection. You'll be, engaging a lot of reflection as a group. We want to think about how we analyze and evaluate these issues and how systematic oppression does play a very big part. And we're not saying to discount the systematic oppression, but we want to also center and focus on the positive progress that's happened, right? So, in thinking about that, how can you frame your work in this sort of framework? Again, in thinking about xenophobia in South Africa, we can talk about the greater context of post-apartheid relations. I know there's been quite a bit of violence recently. I just saw a video yesterday about some boys that were getting harassed for going in a pool that was supposedly for whites only. And so it's easy to kind of highlight the things that are negative, right? And we also know that the media itself is very guilty for thinking about what is negative in this community. But as you embark over the next couple of weeks, I really want you to think about, well, what is going right? What has worked for this community? And how can we continue to build on that? I want you to also reflect on when you think about how volunteerism or this sort of community engagement work, how it's often talked about, right? What kind of words do you hear? What sort of power dynamics do those words infer and imply? How can we ensure that the language we're utilizing really emphasizes and amplifies this sort of positive asset-based approach? And think about instances in which you've seen this be done well, right? Think about times that you feel like a really complicated negative phenomenon is really discussed and illuminated and explored in a positive way. And how does that look like? So, in terms of ethical storytelling, I'm not just necessarily talking about maybe your Instagram or your blog that you're going to do, but I'm also talking about your reflections, right? These daily reflections. And so we can also think of these reflection sessions as opportunities to tell stories, right? This is where we begin to form narratives as individuals, as students and learners. And so as we engage in these dialogues and conversations, and I also urge you to encourage your participants to journal. I really do hope you have a blog, and if you do create a blog, please send us the URL, the link. We would love to follow along. I think that would be a wonderful thing to have. But I think this space in which you'll be conducting reflections, facilitating, some really profound critical thoughts here. We want to think about creating a space in which we are engaging in ethical storytelling. So some quick tips here. Word choice really does matter. Again, we are in a space where everybody will be growing, and if somebody makes a mistake, then let's correct them, right? And let's talk about why words matter. Generalizations are not helpful. So we want to think about specific instances. Again, we know that we will be looking at cases in which people have maybe suffered at the hands of xenophobic acts, but we also understand that each one of those acts is it's an individual experience, right? And that even though, there's a lot of systematic intersecting issues that might come into play that ultimately created this instance of hatred, that we still cannot make generalizations, right? And we can look at trends and we can look at patterns, but we cannot make generalizations, and they aren't helpful to promote any cause. Don't use photos, and I'd also say just in general, don't use language that creates simplistic narratives. So again, thinking about oversimplifying complex issues, it gets overwhelming, right? And that is one of the things that is toughest about this work, is that it becomes, when you look at a single issue, there are so many intersecting factors that it often becomes overwhelming to think about how these all intersect, create this phenomenon. But we want to still be careful about oversimplifying issues through our narratives, through our conversations, where we're really, doing a disservice to the reality and to these people. So again, avoiding oversimplification, avoiding the savior complex, right? Thinking about what our motives are for doing this work. And I want you to think back on that service learning of saviorism workshop that you took a few weeks back. And it's also recorded. So if you want to go back to it, let me know. I can send you the recording. But thinking about what are your true motives for being in that community, and how do you find yourself doing this work? Are you doing this work because you need to get relevant experience to boost your resume, or is it truly about achieving justice and finding liberation for a global community? So avoiding savior complex, valuing transparency and consent. So making sure that you're talking to your partners, right? You're talking to people, you're asking them, hey, is it okay? Or how would you describe what you went through? Or what do you think that the media gets wrong about this issue? Or how do you wish people, what is something you wish people knew about this issue that they don't? Really being transparent with the people you're working with and asking them, good, honest questions, and also making sure you have their consent to cover this issue, to share this information with the AU community, to share this information with really anybody, right? You're sharing their lived experiences in their lives. So honoring consent, asking questions, asking their approval to take photos, especially of personal spaces, sacred spaces. You want to make sure that you are really also instructing and guiding your student participants around this, right? You're also the leaders on this. Benefiting at the risk of dignity is never worth it. So that essentially means, like, sometimes there will be cases where students might be like, oh, but it would just be so awesome if we could do this. But really, it comes at the expense of your community member, your community partner. It's really putting a burden on them. And so again, I want you to always be thinking about reciprocity and the mutual benefit, and ensuring that you're never asking more than you're giving. So don't take more than you are giving. If you're requesting something, make sure that you are reciprocating in some way. So, don't ask them to keep giving when they're already giving so much. Shape stories to maintain the protagonist's dignity and humanity. Again, if you're writing about this in a blog, or you decide to take a photo of someone, even if it's like the back of their head, but you're telling their story in the caption of an Instagram story, or Facebook, what have you, make sure that you're really honoring that person's identity, their dignity, their humanity. And with that, kind of make sure that you're minimizing potential harm to your story subjects. So if it's something that's really personal information, very sensitive information, again, it goes back to consent, but make sure that you are not exposing too much personal information, right? Nobody wants their personal information out there on the internet. It's always, subject to being taken, stolen, what have you. So make sure that we are also securing the privacy of our community hosts. So just to emphasize taking photos and videos, please, please, please always ask for consent. Always just say, hey, is it okay if I take a photo? It's okay to take photos. I often think that it can also be very beautifully artistically done if you take photos of people's profiles, the backs of heads. You can get really nice sort of, I don't know what you call them, sort of like silhouette shots and things like that. But think about how you can, again, honor your hosts, your community partners, your members, honor their privacy, their dignity, and just don't be in their face constantly taking photos. I know when we're excited, especially in this day and age. We tend to take a lot of photos and videos, but that often goes back to that saviorism complex where we're also kind of like just taking photos so that we get that sort of, pat ourselves on the back, look at this great thing I'm doing. And we don't want to perpetuate that sort of image. So be very sparing with your photos and videos, but when you do so, be intentional, get consent, be transparent. With photos of children often really love to take pictures. And you can take some and maybe have those for your own personal keepsake. But, I really discourage kind of that photo taking with children. It tends to promote some attachment issues when these youth oftentimes are seeing groups of volunteers come in and out. So be kind of aware of that power dynamic with children, and be aware of your identity and privilege at all times, right? And the implications on power dynamics of the greater community, not just with children, but the greater community. You are a group of American students from American University in Washington, D.C. And so people will treat you differently, and you might get a little bit of extra special treatment, extra attention, whether it's welcome, positive attention, or negative attention and not so welcome. You will get treated differently, right? And so be aware of that, be humble. You might have to be the one to draw boundaries a lot of times, and that's okay. You are the one to be there as a professional, as a student leader representing AU, your group representing AU. So just remember to think about that at all times. And a quick quote here from Susan Sontag: "To take a photograph is to participate in another person's mortality, vulnerability, and mutability." And, a lot of communities, a lot of cultures have a lot of different perspectives about photography and, if it captures the soul and things like that. And so, again, some people just don't like their photo being taken, right? And so respect that and honor that. It's a very personal, private thing. Um, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so keep that in mind, and use it as, wisely, right? Use it intentionally. So this is just, some code of ethics from the Photographers Without Borders, but, it really just kind of goes back to the principles and the philosophy that drives alternative breaks, as far as centering community voice, about building equity, reciprocity, mutual benefit, ensuring that we avoid this white saviorism complex. So this is just kind of an echo of all of those principles and philosophies we've talked about. We would love for you to take over our Instagram. You might have your own Instagram account, but we would love, love, love for you to log in, go ahead, start taking photos, start posting when you're all at the airport. Again, thinking about everything we've just talked about, right? But when you're talking about, you all, and you're maybe having your welcome braai, right? When you arrive, we would love to see that. And I actually follow the page from my personal, cell phone. So I would love to see you all, and follow along with your journey. So here again is the username and password. Again, you can have the login if you'd like to share this login with maybe a couple of lead contacts, or lead participants who might be kind of the designated Instagrammers or designated social media contact. That would be awesome, right? And let us know. We'd love to see it. Again, I cannot encourage this enough to create some sort of website or blog for your team, and please share it with us, share it with your family, your network, your community partners, to have something where you are all, maybe after your reflection session, you have one person in your group who can maybe be the designated writer, and you can rotate that role every single night, but they can, upload a couple of photos from the day, talk about your day, what you reflected on, who you met with, where you went, who you saw. We'd love to follow along again. We'd love to follow along in the journey. And social media is very superficial in terms of sort of the depth of what we can get from your lessons. So again, these are some websites. Wix, I would say, would probably be my number one recommendation. Super easy, drag and drop, easy to post, easy to blog. But please let us know if you create a website or a blog so that we can follow along. Again, it's something that also helps us sustain our work. And that's what we're talking about here, right? Is sustainability and continuing to build on work. And in the future, you know, students will go back to Cape Town. So having a blog would be great, right? So that's just a little bit about things to think about when you're on the ground. And when you're on the ground, you know, we also want to think about, as you're listening to the stories, how can you continue to sustain this work when you come back? And what does that post-trip activism and advocacy look like? So one opportunity that you're going to have is called Community Collaboration Day. I think before I was talking about it, I think I called it Active Citizen Day, but we've changed the language around that. And essentially, it's going to be after everybody comes back from their trips, all the spring break trips come back. We're going to host an event sometime in April. And this is an event in which you can help amplify your social justice issue, right? You'll talk about, what did you do? What did you do on this trip? What did you learn? Who'd you meet? Also, how can people on campus get involved with this issue? Not just supporting your community partners in South Africa, which is incredibly important, but also how can they get involved in this issue here locally? And something that your group should think about is some local service that you might do with a nonprofit here in DC. And how are you going to translate everything that you learn to an American context? And how are you going to apply this sort of cross-comparative lens? So, you know, thinking about that, thinking about ideas about how you might want your group to present at this day, this event, it's really up to you, right? It can be a presentation, it can be a fundraising event, it could be something more interactive and participatory. That's something to think about. Something to also just get on your resume, not on your resume, on your radar, is that we will be hosting a career and resume building workshop. So we'll talk about how are you going to translate all the skills and experience that you've now gained as a leader, all the, you know, group coordination, communication, reflection, discussion, logistics, coordination, all these sorts of skills that you've engaged in over the last few months with me. You know, how do you translate that into your resume and into your conversations in your career and propelling yourself forward? So we'll talk about that. And then also just thinking about some quick opportunities for actions within our office and on campus. So you might have heard about this, but there is a academic program hosted by our office called CSLP, or the Community Service Learning Program. And if you come back and you decide, I'm really passionate about this issue, or I want to do service in the local DC area, and I want to attach this service work because it's relevant to a course that I'm taking, you can earn an additional credit by connecting a course to 35 hours of service. And that course is basically your choice. There's not a whole lot of restrictions on it. And the office will help you find the right community partner. But if you have a partner, great, you can come with them. You do have peer mentors that are assigned to you, and they will host reflection sessions and kind of help guide your experience throughout the semester. And it comes out to about 3 hours of volunteering a week, just thinking about what that commitment looks like for either yourself or for your participants. DC Reads, you might have heard about this. This is a literacy program. It's a literacy, and now there's actually a college access program branch to it, where you can actually get paid. I think that it says 15.20 an hour, but it's actually, I think, 16.10 an hour if you have federal work study. So again, this is another program that our office runs. If it's something that interests you, just let us know. Explore DC. If you want to be an Explore DC leader, Explore DC is an event that we have for freshmen to essentially orient them to the city and also get to know some local organizations, do some service. We would love for you to be leaders in the fall for fall 2023. So if you are interested in being an Explore DC leader, again, just let me know. And lastly, Eagle Endowment. Eagle Endowment is a fund in which students and student clubs can earn up to $1,000. And this is something that opens up 3 times a year, but you can apply every semester. And this is in order to implement or see out a community service project in DC. So if you and your group come back from South Africa and you decide that you want to do service at a local organization, you end up doing that service and you decide that you want to implement some sort of project with them, you can earn up to $1,000 to implement that project. And I would be remiss if I also didn't mention the student clubs or organizations that exist on campus. We have so many through the Center for Student Involvement. We have the Students for Service, the Students for Justice. We have so many organizations. If you go ask CSI, they would be more than happy to let you know about the organizations that might align with your particular social justice issues and passions. So again, don't forget about that as a resource. Hopefully this is helpful. I know none of this is particularly like so illuminating and eye-opening, but hopefully it's something to just think about. And again, I'm so excited for you all to go on this trip. I'm always just a text message away. You have my phone number. You can WhatsApp me if anything comes up and there's an emergency while you're away. One last thing I just want to say is I will be sending an email to all emergency contacts that were listed from everybody's Teradata portal. So I will be sending an email to all of those contacts essentially once you all land in Cape Town. I would love for you to send me a photo and we'll make sure that everybody gets a note to saying, they're there, they arrived safe and sound. Here's a picture of them. They're at the accommodations or maybe at your welcome bar. And again, good luck, safe travels. We're so proud of you and we'll see you when you get back. All right. Take care.